So welcome everybody. My name is David, and I'm here today with four other social entrepreneurs from very different communities around the world for a question and answer and problem solving discussion about supporting and helping and empowering young people and new enterprises largely in marginalized communities. With financial literacy skills and tools, which both affirm their own economic identities and enable them to launch and advance their ideas in powerful and creative ways. I'm going to help introduce and facilitate a bit because the rest of you have not met and talked before. But I'm largely going to stay out of the way and let you have the conversation. Maybe we go around the virtual table here briefly, and each of you can just briefly introduce your name, where you are, generally who you work with, and then we'll loop back around and ask a couple starting questions to tee up our conversation. Lily, you want to start?
Sure. Thank you for inviting me into this conversation, and I've also been looking forward to it, Jake, and I'm really honored to be here and to hearing from all of you. I am Lily Lapenna. I'm Italian. I grew up in London, and I ran an organization called MyBnk, which works with young people between the age of 5 and 25 on financial inclusion and enterprise skill development.
Awesome. Jake?
All right. Hi ho, mabuhay. My name's Jake Foreman. I'm absentee Shawnee from Oklahoma, as well as Filipino and Scots-Irish. That means that I'm a blessedizo. I'm blessed. I'm a mixed person, born and raised here in Albuquerque, and I work in the Native American Community Academy. I worked there for the past 6 years, and I'm really passionate about youth entrepreneurship. For 2 years, I was their senior capstone teacher. So I wanted to create a classroom where students could apply their passions and put them into practice. And then I really got into this idea that, students need an opportunity to work, learn, and earn. So I created a youth cooperative called the Karena Colectiva, and Karena Sanskrit for compassion, or to relieve suffering. So we really wanted to start focusing on youth that maybe had unstable housing, attendance issues or issues with grades in their classes. And we wanted to work with them specifically to exercise their passions and then to put it into a business. So I've been working on that project for about 4 years. I'm trained as a community and regional planner, as well as an educator. And again, I'm just really excited to learn from these individuals today and have a dialogue.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing us together, Jake.
Yeah.
It's really because of you that we're all here.
Thank you.
Hamse?
Yeah, well, good afternoon or good evening based on where you are. My name is Hamse Warfa. I am based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and my work is creating economic identity for people who are excluded from the global economic ecosystem. These include refugees, these include women farmers, young people who have the capability, the skills necessary to connect it to the global economy, but yet the current system, ecosystem we have, exclude them from opportunities. So we're using blockchain-based software solution to empower people to have a digital identity, economic identity. And my work is both based here in Minnesota as well as in refugee camps. So I just recently got back from Kenya, where I spent 3 weeks in refugee camp that I used to call home myself in 1993 before resettling, here in the United States. So I'm very excited to be part of this conversation, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us today, for everything you've done in this area. Bill Carter, you want to give a brief intro to yourself?
Oh, sure. Very briefly, David and I have worked together for a decade at least, and then even before that, and most recent, and over the last decade, our work has really crystallized the work around nourishing economies, which is part of the larger subtext of our work with Naka, and a lot of the work that that we're doing with the Navajo and Hopi. So I look forward to learning more about this.
Awesome, thank you. And I mean, just one more tidbit of background. You've been with Ashoka for 37 years or so.
Yeah, since in one form or another, since before it became a corporation was just but at the latter stage of when it was an idea floating around in Bill Drayton's head.
Awesome. So again, I'm David Strelneck. I work with Ashoka and a range of social entrepreneurs and other organizations around the world on actions and enterprises that help spark and spread what we call nourishing economies or nourishment economies. And basically regenerative enterprises, social or business enterprises that reflect not just the connection, but the overlap, the alignment between human well-being in terms of health and spirit and psychology and natural ecosystems as well. And all the innovative and creative enterprises we see the Ashoka Fellows around the world and other social entrepreneurs initiating that build on that value proposition. And it's very powerful. Based on that, we started working with Naka and Jake and others about a year ago, and it's growing and it's really exciting what's going on. We can talk more about that another time. You can learn more at www.nourishn.com, where we talk about a lot of that. But the reason we're here today is that as Jake has really helped put forward a lot of these ideas with the youth in his community and in his school, with his other colleagues at the Native American Community Academy and others, he began to voice a sort of a prior need around basic financial skills for the young people he works with. And so that's why we're here today. Jake, maybe you could get a little more specific with some of the initiatives and challenges right now. Take 3 or 4 minutes and tee us up with a real sense of the situation you're in and a couple of questions, and then let's just go at it.
Great. Well, I'll start. I'll continue from my story that I was talking about at Naka. After I was a capstone teacher at Naka, I got into working with other organizations, and I really got into this idea of being a social entrepreneur. I saw there was a lot of opportunity, and I think people really saw the work that we were doing at Naka and saying, hey, we need to teach about financial business basics. So we put together a proposal. My other job is with New Mexico Community Capital. It's a CDFI, a community development financial institution. And we put a proposal together to teach around financial and business basics to families across New Mexico in different pueblos. So while I was working at Naka with the Cadena Colectiva, I was also starting to put together a proposal and curriculum around financial and business basics. And as you know, there's a lot of curriculum out there around financial business basics. And from my critical viewpoint, I realized, it's one thing to talk about, hey, you need to save money in order to have a good life. You need good credit, right? You need to be able to borrow from banks, to be successful. And I thought in my mind, I was like, for youth that I'm working with, it's hard to talk about savings when we're not earning any money, to begin with. So that was something that I was thinking about. It's like, how do we actually, have people earn an income, earn money from their work? And then also really, what are those essential skills that we really need to be teaching? Are they one-off, workshops on how to build credit? Are they one-off workshops on how to save and budget? Or are they really about, what's the deeper learning and lessons that we could be teaching, And so that's what I was really interested in learning from you all, is like, what are, in your opinion, those really core elements around financial literacy, business basics? What are the things that we need to think about that we absolutely need to incorporate into our curriculum?
And Jake, can you illustrate that also with like a specific example right now, maybe of one or two of the young people you're working with?
Yeah. So So for instance, again, the students that I'm working with, this might be their first job opportunity in some ways. They're getting a small stipend to work on a service project and to work on their holistic health. Their physical health, their spiritual health, their emotional health, and their physical health. So they devoted time to each of those categories. And right now, we're starting to think of, okay, after they get this stipend, the small stipend, how are they going to spend it? Right? So we're starting to think about, what are those skills that I need to be teaching them to really, provide a solid foundation for their future growth as entrepreneurs. A lot of my students aren't necessarily interested in going to college after high school. So I'm thinking of like, what should be their timeline or trajectory, for some of these students after getting out of it. And really, they're saying that they haven't ever done any type of budgeting before. A lot of cases, again, this might be their first paycheck. So, what bank do I recommend to them? Some students right now don't even have their social security number. So I couldn't even get them a check, for the $200. So I'm looking for creative ways to compensate these young people in different ways, because as a school, we can't provide cash. It's very difficult for us to even write checks. So we're looking into other creative ways that we could, compensate these young people for what they're doing as well, just as an example.
Lily, do you have reactions? Like where does your mind go given your experience with this stuff?
Thank you, Jake. My mind went in many different directions, and maybe I can give a bit more context about the MyBnk journey.
Mm-hmm.
So I set up MyBnk 10 years ago. At the time I was fairly young, I was 26 years old, and I realized that a lot of my friends, although we'd had pretty good educations, we were in huge amounts of debt and didn't know what an APR was. So really there was a complete lack of financial understanding and literacy, and we'd never been exposed to any of it. So we went through school and university, and nobody had ever sat down and said, these are the basics about money. And for me, that was a significant gap in the education system. And I thought, if this is the case for me, and I've been, I'm coming in from a place where I've been lucky to have great schools around me and great teachers, what is it like for young people in underserved communities? So I went and spent a lot of time in these communities and realized that there's a huge poverty premium. That in fact, it is so expensive from a financial point of view and from a banking point of view to be poor. And it is so much cheaper if you have a bit of money, right? And for me, that was the most frustrating and sick and wrong reality, right? That in fact, there were people who had less money than me that were having to pay for banking services while I was getting them for free. And I wanted to do something about that. So, in the communities that I started off in London, there were levels of financial exclusion, and there was no financial education on the school curriculum, and young people were interacting with money lenders generation after generation, were highly indebted, and yet had a huge fear of debt. So there was a whole psychological and kind of spiritual association with money that had been passed on generation after generation that often was quite toxic and fearful. So we started to run MyBnk, and our approach from the beginning, and I'd say this is one of the answers I wanted to give you around, how do we make it work? How do we take it away from being a kind of prescribed workshop to being something that young people really connect with and thus engage with, right? And it starts having an impact on their lives. One key point for us was the co-creation piece. So we never set about creating anything without ever co-creating it with young people, right? And putting them at the heart. One of our big values is young people are the heartbeat of MyBnk. And on any given day in our office, there are young people co-creating programs with our teams, with our staff, and they are part of our team. They are the central part of our team. So we co-created, we made a few mistakes along the way, but we got a lot of things right. And I'm not going to talk for too much longer, but I wanted to share maybe 4 things that we find work for us. And we've now got data and research based on our approach versus other approaches too, that dates back 10 years. And these 4 things are as follows. One is that the process has to be fun and engaging, right? It has to light you up. So the financial education programs that we run are competing with extreme sport programs in summer camps, for example, and they get better ratings and better feedback from the young people. And that's because we've created them not to be, oh my God, I'm going to fall asleep thinking about budgeting, but rather, you know, the kids are learning about budgeting by doing physical activity. So we cater for the kinesthetic learner, we cater for the visual learner by creating meaningful visual content to go with the programs. We cater for the audio learner by really giving them experience of dialogue and engaging in conversation. So making it fun and participatory and almost kind of, you know, this word is overused, but gamifying the process is really important, because otherwise money becomes a really dry topic. So fun is a key element for us. The other one is what we call just-in-time education. So there's a value in theory being, you know, theory and practice coming in at different stages of the young person's life. What we find to be most effective is if we can provide education just in time. So can we be there for the young person as they are about to get, as you said, they're about to get that first paycheck or that first funding or the first job or the first, you know, their enterprise is taking off and they're about to start engaging with money. So if you can be there then they learn and they apply. You learn and you apply, you learn and you apply, and it sticks. So just in time is important. And the other things I think are what we've learned through a lot of neuroscience research that we did and that various universities around us did with us, was that if you don't start young, you have less likelihood of forming habits and of contributing to financial well-being. So we were starting at 11, we moved that dial forward. We now start at 5. And we do intergenerational activities where moms and dads and grandparents and, you know, uncles work with the child to do games around money. And we send these little toolkits home. They're little boxes full of activities. And by starting young, you form habits, habit formation. And also you start having better and more positive associations with money, money the enabler, etc. So just in time, fun, start young. And I think the other one is nudge. You know, we use a lot around nudging in behavioral science, nudge-based approaches where you're feeding and constantly reiterating and representing the same information in different ways at different points of a young person's development is very important. So essentially you don't abandon them, you're with them along this journey. And I think for you, you have the optimal setup to do that because you're in contact with your own people regularly.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That was super helpful. You know, those, you know, a lot of times we've been working with organizations and they ask, let's check out your curriculum, you know, and they show us their curriculum, the same basic information, but we're seeing that we're providing a process, a methodology, you know, and exactly, and what we needed is we needed those key points of what informs our process and exactly what you shared, you know, this is exactly what I was looking for. So thank you.
Great. And, you know, happy to give you very practical examples of each of those as we progress in our conversations.
You know, Jake, one thing Lily said that strikes me with things you've shared with me, it might also bridge to Hamse a little bit, is the intergenerational piece, right? A lot of the kids you're dealing with, a lot of the families in your communities are disrupted. Either the family itself or the community more broadly has a range of other problems. And you've raised this question of how do we expect a child to come out of a really disrupted home environment and just be able to snap into, you know, business thinking, right? So Lily, that was really helpful to help me think about the other things Jake has been working on. But Hamse, does that, can you give us both that snapshot of the details of what you're doing, but also I imagine you have some insights on that piece, yeah? Hamse, I don't think we can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, sorry. I was speaking while on mute. Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Lily. This is, I was excited to hear you give these insights. I also want to share that, you know, I've been working with a local organization called Youth Prize, which I think has adopted your model. the youth bank model in philanthropy. And so very excited to connect with you here. So, you know, so there is maybe kind of random thoughts first, you know, for one, what I found, you know, in my own personal experience and also working with young people of diverse background is that the perception of the self and the community and the environment they grow up in is a lot shaped by what they see, the self-efficacy, how they perceive themselves versus how the, you know, the community, the broader community, the mainstream community, especially for marginalized communities, feel. So the sense of growth mindset versus deficit mindset. And what we're seeing, and at least from my perspective, is that young people already develop this mindset that they are not as valued, that the prospect for them to have a financial freedom, to make a contribution to their community is an uphill battle. And I think that is more acute when you talk about their relationship with financial institutions who see them as not really important until they're old enough to open a bank account and so forth. But as Lily was saying, it really starts at a young age to develop, you know. So for the past few years, I was working with the University of Minnesota Department of Economics to co-create a curriculum that will be incorporated in the school districts here in Minneapolis and St. Paul to teach young people. And this is the point that really resonated well with me with what Lily was saying earlier. In the how matters as important as the what's. Yeah. And I think recognizing that, you know, the how is in some cases more important for young people than the eventual outcome. So if the how, the manner and the processes and the mechanism in which young people are being engaged is one of a top-down approach, one where it's, you know, I did a focus group 2 years ago with young people, and I brought iPads and ordered pizza, and I said, you know, you don't have to dress in suits, just come with your jeans, and they said this is the best experience they ever had. We got more results, you know, for our needs assessment that we were doing than previously experienced, because the how mattered so much. And even the more vocal point I would like to make is that young people feel they are not being valued. And so the bottom approach in which young people can also co-create rather than being, you know, being looked at as people who are getting something, people who are being taught, people who are, you know, we're trying to help you. I think that mindset of adults who see young people as beneficiaries rather than participants and co-creators, I think plays an important role as we talk about understanding the financial ecosystem. Let me tie that to my current work. So currently there's 2.5 billion people around the world who don't have what I would call economic identity. Because the existing systems we have, whether you talk about here in the United States, the FICO score, the Equifax of the world, or you talk about the global economic, you know, ecosystem, young people are excluded, and people who are in extreme poverty, whether refugees, women farmers, because they lack the economic identity, which is a credentialing of activities. Again, because life is about collection of activities and events, and what we put value with is what we collect and what allows someone to access opportunities, economic opportunities. So here I live in the Twin Cities. I can go to a bank and with a piece of mail and say, you know, here's, you can find me, I'm credit worthy. But the mother who produced the coffee that we're enjoying, you know, that I've just enjoyed this morning here, is doesn't get the credit of what she has done, because there is 20 middlemen between her and Starbucks or whoever, you know, the corporate is. So the case is even more acute for young people. Imagine if adults are experiencing that, where they don't have an economic identity, it's extremely difficult to uplift, you know, yourself from poverty. So what we have done is we developed, and most people know Bitcoin. So we don't deal with Bitcoin, we don't do cryptocurrency, but the technology that Bitcoin leverage is called blockchain. And the best way to explain is that, you know, everything is now centralized and it goes to corporate control. There is a bank that's controlling our financial information. There is a FICO score. There is this blockchain is basically decentralized, where the individual owns their own data and is able to use that data to monetize, to access markets and loans and things like that. So the example I was given of the mother, if this mother can show currently women farmers get tractor loans at a 40% interest rate because they don't have any access to any ways to show their transaction history. So imagine if a young person in Albuquerque can say, you know what, life is collection of activities and events. I'm an artist. This is what I have been producing. And this is what I sold to, even at the age of 14, at the age of 15. Then he or she already has a head start, so that by the time she gets into adult, she has accumulated transaction history that's allowing her or him to get access and get, you know, monetize the relationships, the activities that she's been doing. So let me pause there, you know, for a second.
Super interesting. I mean, Jake, where are you getting poked?
Yeah, so this is, you know, there's a couple things. A big tenet that we use at NACA is process must be informed by the indigenous worldview. So we're really, you know, I think that's what I'm thinking about for both what Lily and Hamse said, because for us, a lot of our students are still living in a different worldview, you know, are really valuing things that I think our Western society devalues, like our health,
Exactly.
like our connection to culture. And I think, you know, a big part for us is like, I'm trying to have these students buy into this idea of being an entrepreneur to make money, but that's not their biggest, that's not like their biggest value. Their biggest value is how are they going to bring this knowledge back to the community? How are they going to, you know, show this idea that what we're doing as a youth cooperative, yes, it's earning money, but we are creating value in different ways through skill development, through connections that we have. And so Hamse, I want to ask you, like, how do you assess value, you know, using this BanQu? Like, I'm looking for different ways to show our value as an enterprise, for students to communicate this to other people. Like, I'm wondering, like, what are those alternative ways to show value? Or, you know, and I think even in a typical way too, I want these students to establish some type of credit history. You know, how do we start doing this right now, as 17, 18-year-olds?
Thank you so much. Let me give an example of the work we're doing in Kenya. So in Kenya, the government of Kenya actually have done two amazing things over the last year and a half. One is they said now, because there are a lot of people who have assets that are not valued. So they have, you know, livestock, you know, things like that, that are now become part of collateral, you know, so the governments and banks would value. You can use your 100 camel, for example, to get a loan from a bank. And the Kenyan government has created a policy to make that happen, where banks can value your cattle as a collateral to use in a systemic way. The second thing is that they created, they have announced they want to create 1 million youth job opportunities, online job opportunities. So there are a lot of young people who have talents. They are writers. They can work with, you know, they don't need to be physically in Minneapolis or in New York. They can work with the Washington Post, New York Times, as you know, freelance writers. So if they have the credentials and they can show the certification they have received, you know, that writing certification course they have taken, and they have this blockchain platform which they own, the challenge that Facebook has been going through with the Analytica and issues like that is because data is centralized, it's controlled by corporates. So if the data belongs to the individual, the young person who says, you know what, I completed this workforce, skill development course, and here is a proof of that. I'm able to write, and I'm able to get an online job. Now you're creating a new value that doesn't really exist. And another example I would like to share is the Nigerian diaspora community in New York said, we're tired of just sending remittance money. We would like to create more sustainable ways for our family members to support themselves. So they created something that's like Uber, but it's motorcycle. It's called Uber Motorcycle, where a social enterprise buys $1,500 Uber, motorcycle for 18-year-old to drive and make money. And right now, because they have the BanQu platform, they have the digital economic identity, they can go to a dealership 6 months from now and say, you know what, this is how many rides I do on a weekly basis with my motorcycle. This is how much money I earn. And also, I have my uncle who's based in New York who has been sending me $400. So I'm credit worthy person. I should be able to get a car to upgrade to Uber, and drive Uber in Nigeria. And so I'm just using that as an example, but it shows something that a young person can monetize, can put a value that's currently not being valued. And so those are some examples. In the Dab refugee camp, I was just there recently, and we signed up 2,000, mostly young people, but 2,000 refugees who are now using the BanQu platform to upload their education certifications. So they're in the camps, which they said they feel like they're in an open prison, but they are able to say, here is the education, high school diploma I got. Here is the workforce training I got from this NGO. Here's the 20 loans I've been getting from this microfinance institution that I've repaid back in full amounts. But right now, there's no way for them to show that they're credit worthy. If they repaid back 20 loans, they are credit worthy. They should be able to get, less risk-based, analysis on what their, interest rate should be, rather than just looking at the maximum cap because they're high risk. They don't have that history. So these are some examples. I hope, some of it resonated.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's exactly, what we've been thinking about. With our project, we're always saying, documentation is key. I've learned that, from the beginning of just taking photos to just documenting our story of what we've been doing, what we've been creating. And I think it's kind of another level of just having, telling young people to really, everything you do is important. And because one day, either as an artist, you need a portfolio. Looking for jobs, you need some type of portfolio. But I'm just wondering, like a very technical question: when someone goes into the bank, do they show them their phone number and their BanQu profile? How does that work?
It's just like how you would sign up with Facebook or LinkedIn, or so you basically go banquapp.com. You create a username and password. And then you start uploading. It's really as simple as signing up LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter. The difference here is that it's not just social network. It's an economic identity platform. You're building transaction history that's tied to your economic activities, and you belong. That data belongs to you. It doesn't belong to BanQu. It doesn't belong to. There's no centralized database. In fact, there is no database, and this is what blockchain. We can get to it, at a later time. But blockchain provides that immutability, consensus, where people who you allow to join your network, like Facebook, how people request your friendship, and you accept those that you want to have friendship with, and basically you monetize that, to your own benefit by showing. So one example is, You know, the example I was sharing about the Nigeria Uber, you know, if you go to that dealership becomes part of your network because they are now allowing you to, and then your family member who sent you, you know, remittance money becomes part of your network. And so by tying all these, triangulating these data points that belongs to you, allows you to lift yourself, you know, uplift yourself from poverty. Because again, life is about collection of events and activities. And by capturing those critical activities, you're able to monetize those, you know. But if you are a refugee, if you are, you know, displaced, if you are someone who's, you know, in a marginalized condition, you don't capture those, you know. And when you don't capture, it's a very difficult position to be. The average stay in refugee camps is 17 years. So imagine someone not developing or building, losing their identity or life activities for 17 years. That's a long time to lose, you know. And it, you know, it's a mobile site. It's not, you know, you can access in any mobile. It requires very low internet bandwidth. Even 1G will do it. And if there is a lack of, you know, literacy issues and things like that, an intermediary like your organization and yourself becomes critical for, you know, helping young people or those, you know, situations to be that facilitator.
Yeah, you know, thank you for sharing. And it goes to the next point is that, you know, as a CDFI with New Mexico Community Capital, we're now looking into this kind of micro loans, you know, for some of these young people. And Lily, I'm interested in how do we start to develop our own credit unions or financial institutions, you know, within our school or within our local communities to start tracking, you know, some of these transactions that we're doing, or be able to establish some type of, you know, credit history through microloans, you know, with young people.
Yeah, that's a great question. I wanted to add, before I answer that, on something Hamse was saying, which is so fascinating. My new venture is around blockchain for impact. So obviously my fascination for financial inclusion led me to cryptocurrencies, but I quickly got more fascinated with the blockchain and the potential it has for as a tool for a catalyst for social and for sustainable change. And we are going to be hosting an event where we want to bring young people into this world, and we're going to be showcasing organizations that are doing interesting things in this space, and then bringing in about 20 organizations who want to be doing interesting things in this space, who are blockchain social curious. So I would love to open up that invitation to you all. And Hamza, we have to talk about that offline at some point. So to answer your question about how do we create a kind of a microcredit program. So I worked a lot in microcredit. I worked in Bangladesh on sort of very traditional microcredit programs back in the early 2000s with BRAC and Grameen. And we started with MyBnk thinking, you know what we need is to create a bank for young people. So we created a savings scheme, which was very informal. We created a loan scheme, which again was very informal. And my feeling is to start very lean and to start with a very experimental mindset. And again, to kind of see how the community and specifically how the young people respond to some of these opportunities. And we quickly realized this big learning point, that the idea of giving young people a loan is very exciting, and it's actually very exciting to them too, because they want to set up a business, or because suddenly they have capital that they can use in an entrepreneurial way. The reality then became for us very soon was that simply was not enough, right? A loan in and of itself to a young person is going to work for about 3% of the population who are natural entrepreneurs and who would, by the way, do it without your loan, because they would do it anyway. But for the rest, they need to be accompanied on a journey and taken on a journey, right? So that process piece becomes important yet again. So we decided that we were not going to just do the loan, and we had created this very cool scheme where young people administered loans to other young people. So it was a peer lending scheme, although the money came from us and was recycled through the system. What we then realized was more important than this, more important than access to capital, was access to know-how, inspiration, role models, and basic processes that could help young people turn that loan into a business that earned them money and that earned them life skills and that got them excited and engaged. So we created learning journeys for young entrepreneurs. A lot, again, focused on our values around education, of fun and engagement. And we also brought in a lot of access and visibility to people that were already doing it. So not necessarily a Richard Branson, because that's kind of too far out, but who in your community is doing something interesting in the space of entrepreneurship? And how can we spend time shadowing and learning and getting inspired from that? So role models became a very important part of that. And we went from being quite broad to being as specific as possible and created a toolkit called Enterprise in a Box, which again is a box. And it's a toolkit that features an ethical product that we source through social entrepreneurs globally, mostly locally if you can, but we had products coming in from different countries that were already being traded in the UK. We populated the box with these products and with toolkits on how to start creating a social enterprise out of this box. And there you bring in the notion of value as well, because a lot of young people were driven by social actions and social values in their community, but didn't quite know how to reconcile that with business. Like, how do I create a small business that has a good impact on the environment and a good impact on the people in my community? And so this toolkit was a starting point from them. So the young people would trade the products. Some of them were extremely entrepreneurial with it. And then they would reorder boxes. But from there, it was really just a starting point. It was a springboard because it gave them an experience.
Can I ask just a clarifying question with the enterprise in a box? So they would come with a toolkit, it would come with a ethically sourced product, and then they would design like a business plan, or do they sell these boxes? Or can you clarify a little bit more?
Yes, sure. So they design a business plan, a plan of action, you know, again, very lean and agile, very much based on trying things out, what works, what doesn't work, asking themselves. So there are a number of key steps in this toolkit that you follow, right? One is around planning, one is around selling, one is around marketing, one is around working effectively in teams, understanding your strengths, understanding how you come together and play to each other's strengths. One part is around branding. So you create a brand and an identity for your project. So all the basics around how to engage with a product business. But the difference here is that we are giving them the product. And so some of the young people would start with the product, but then their vision for the business was much greater and bigger than that. So they would then start diversifying by ordering in other products or creating their own products. We left a lot of, after we had given them an initial experience, we left a lot of space for their own sort of ideas and entrepreneurial juices to flow. But what we found very important was that that first experience needed to be as grounded and as supported as possible, because the risk is that you then put them off for life. You know, there's nothing worse than giving a young person a loan and they're sitting there going, oh my God, how, what, where, I'm a failure and I never want to do this again. So alarm bells around that.
I just wanted to share, you know, I completely resonate with everything that you were saying. We are in the process right now of doing a couple things. I wanted to show you all. This is our first attempt at a box, real fast, and it has some books in it. But this is kind of based off of Vishnu's box of ideas, you know, from last year, and it's our financial business basics box. But
oh, cool. What's
yeah, so this box of ideas, this box, we knew that it was really important to share. What we're hoping to put in our box is our learning tools, you know, that we're going to do for our financial business basics, as well as like a cash box. And what we were able to do is we're able to create some products with our collectiva. So we have some little medicine bags. And that was their product. They're ethically sourced. You know, we created them here right now in this house that you see behind me. And we had our first market experience. And it was really scary. It was really scary for all of us because, like you said, I didn't want to put them off. And there's been days when I've been at the market where we've made zero, so we didn't sell anything for an hour and a half, but by the end of the day, they made over $300, just by, with $100 worth of material and time. So it was really valuable to see that, yes, it's possible. And now they're all interested in now getting deeper into this collective enterprise. So I really think like that hands-on, that tangible, once you have money in your hands, it really makes a big difference, for young people to get interested. The other thing that we're going to provide with our financial business basics course is we're providing everyone a Google Chromebook. And, I thought about it, never in my life have I been able to have a decent, a laptop for under $200. So that's kind of exciting for us. It's another way to capture data using the drive, to collect information and on an ongoing basis. But, these are some things that we've just been thinking about. But this idea of a enterprise in a box is amazing. In New Mexico Community Capital, we have our Native Entrepreneur in Residence program. So we have 30 different Native entrepreneurs around the country that have been through our entrepreneurship residence program, 6 months mentorship, as well as a $15,000 stipend for their business. So I'm thinking that maybe we could connect with these entrepreneurs to be the mentors, to provide, products for our box, and kind of even like case studies as well, to create a community of practice. Because I think that's really important as well, that we connect our youth to other Native entrepreneurs, because I think there's this mentality that as Native Americans, we're not into business. That's not what we do. So, I really resonate with everything you shared. Thank you.
So I like the idea that you can bring the slightly more experienced entrepreneur into contact with the ones that are giving it a go. That's really powerful. And I really like the idea that at the heart of the community and these young people, there are some values that are important to them. And there's no reason why those values can't be put in the box. And that's kind of the point I was trying to make, is that for our young people, they had really big values around the environment, and we were able to put them in that box by selecting the right products, but also by supporting them in developing the right marketing pitch or the right ethos for their business. And then we also do longer term entrepreneurial programs where they create their own product or service or event, and we support them through that experience. And we might, again, it's a lot of curating the space and holding the space. So we don't just say, go and find a marketplace. We actually give them real life shops that they can trade in, and real life, market stalls or whatever it is. So we're in the background facilitating a lot of that, because we think they need to have a supported first business experience in order for them to really gain the most out of the learning experience.
Let me mention, this is just such an informative conversation. I guess for Jake and Bill, you and I, we and our team have some other things underway, but 3 things have been mentioned here that maybe we all should follow up on. One is, so a minute ago, Jake referred to the box that Vishnu introduced. What that is a box of ideas around introducing nutrition and nourishment dynamics into schools. So just so everybody has that background. And Jake has been building on that idea in a number of directions, but I love the idea also, Lily, that you mentioned. This is very helpful, of the box use in home for the families to play with. So Bill and Jake, let's talk about that a little more, because we've been dealing with some of these intergenerational challenges and questions, and I was like, aha, that just connected the dots. A second thing is that this summer, we're, with the support of a group who actually is enabling us to have this huddle today, called the Christensen Fund. We're bringing 2 other Ashoka fellows back to the Southwest on a nourishment entrepreneurship action and learning journey. That's what it's called, to spend a total of 7 days with Native communities in the Hopi and the Navajo reservations. And so, Yeah, so we're just connecting the dots here, and I'm going, wow, there's some new ideas to weave into that, right? Um, I'll send you the outline. It's pretty exciting, and it's really as I said to somebody I met yesterday, we again, with the support of the Christensen Fund, thank you if they're watching. We raised the basic budget to do this, and we quickly turned it into a project twice or three times the size of that budget because it's got so much promise. So that's exciting. And then also the other thing that's come up, Hamse, largely through what you said, but Bill and Jake, it's helping me think, is in this dynamic which we call nourishment economies, which basically means that when you connect nutrition in land to nutrition in people, you tap into all kinds of powerful forces and goods, from personal health, food security and food quality, environmental stewardship, carbon capture, and water systems, and in many societies worldwide, you tap into social and cultural forces, traditions that are hundreds or thousands of years old, that are rooted in the nutritional relationship between the earth and people. A lot of the enterprises which we've seen leading social entrepreneurs, the Ashoka fellows, and others launching that are built on this kind of value platform require the entrepreneur to somehow monetize more than one value stream, more than one product, because they're very powerful, but there isn't a single product for them to focus on that can pay for the whole thing. So a lot of the innovative or entrepreneurial challenge really has been in how to monetize both the production of maybe some food, and the carbon that's being captured in the soil as a way of farming this way, and the positive results for biodiversity. And it's only when all of those things can be monetized and packaged that the enterprise makes enough financial revenue to sustain itself. So I just want to play that back and say that some of the things you're saying, although they're applied in different contexts, is really helpful for me thinking about platforms we might begin to use to capture and specify those different value streams and then package them together so we as entrepreneurs, but also the financing institutions, can see the total value package, right? So thank you for those insights. This is really helpful for me.
Could I just add, could I just make a quick comment? Yes, I mean, actually, there are three things that I just heard, and then a fourth thing that I just heard in a conversation I was having this morning with our Brazil team. It sounds to me like we have several boxes now. We have the box that Jake and that Lily's evolved and Jake is evolving around on the finance side. We've got the nourishment piece. We've got the interesting piece for me, which is what the work that Hamse is doing is basically assuming that wherever those people are, that body of experience, that is the total body of experience that Hamse is talking about, is still going to be necessary for people to establish their credibility at a higher level in the economic chain, regardless of whether it's their financial record, but it's all these other things that are going to make them more creditworthy and going to open more doors for them. And so it's suddenly I thought to myself, okay, there's an insight here that goes beyond the strictly financial, right, to this broader set of credentials that are in fact what financial institutions do look at when they're assessing the creditworthiness of people for loan applications, right? So I thought, okay, there's the social dimension there. The other piece that and I've just got a fellow candidate that I'm going to be interviewing in Brazil soon. What he's developed is essentially a set of practices, a set of nutrition, food practices that he's giving to doctors, and having the doctors prescribe, both in terms of what the food they consume and people farm, as an alternative to the prescription for medicines. He's creating a farm. He's creating an organic farm to table in the favelas in Brazil. But he's at the same time, I'm looking forward to learning more about him. He's essentially having the doctors in the favelas work with a set of nourishment prescriptions as an alternative to medicine. And so there's and I'm not sure if it's another toolkit or if it's an extension, but I'm beginning to see how a number of these initiatives could tie together in either a series of toolkits or a broader body of practice.
One of the things that's really exciting, Bill, for me in all this, we've been talking for many years now about the pattern we see that value is being created across many sectors of society, sectors which are traditionally not thought of together. And so there's healthcare value, and there's environmental stewardship value, and there's farming value, and those three sectors never talk to each other.
Right.
And so what we're saying here is, but they can. We know they should. We know the value is real, and now we're saying, yeah, they can. We got the tools, we got the pieces, we got the people.
Right. And we may, in speaking to what Jake is doing, I may be trying to tie this, and I apologize for going on a little bit about this, but to the others, but everybody, but it strikes me that the thread of who else, Jake, is it the community partners? Maybe it's doctors. Maybe the doctors are part of the investment. Maybe there's a dimension here.
Yeah.
On the health side,
yep.
that goes into and they are part of the work that you're doing with the young people, and also perhaps with the development partners, right? And so that you've got another framework, another filter for all the tools that Lily and Hamse have developed that are bundled together. So just
yeah, that's a great point. One other job that I have is actually at the UNM Health Sciences in their Office for Community Health. So been working there for about 5 years as a research assistant, and now as a contractor. And what we see is that we see a huge growth in health professions, in the field of nursing, doctors, and we see a huge need to have more native practitioners. So that's one thing. On top of that, we have communities that we're working in that have up to 50% of their population have things like diabetes, all of these preventable illnesses. So we know that there's an economic value to decreasing, these preventable diseases that we're dying from. My dad itself died from a cirrhosis of the liver. We have a lot of people that have major addiction issues. So we want to tie this into our financial business basics course. And I think the way that we're going to do it is through the delivery, through the how. We're always going to start with a meal. We're always going to start with a dialogue around the kitchen table to talk about things like money, but to also eat together. And we've brought in an amazing world-renowned potter, Roxanne Swensel, and she's a permaculturalist as well. So we're going to have all of the food catered that are going to be local indigenous, produce, and indigenous farmers and indigenous chefs to cater these meals, so that hopefully we could start that habit as well of changing our health, because we see that as a huge need. A lot of the families that we're working with have a lot of children with special needs and dietary restrictions. So I'm really interested, Lily, we were just going to have childcare for some of these young people, but now I'm thinking we need to get together and provide this box to have for all of these children under the age of 5 to start working with money as well. So there's a lot of ideas, and Hamse as well. I would love to sign up some of our participants, to be a part of BanQu, because again, I was wondering if there's a way to start tracking these changes in our habits around health as well that can show some type of value, or to be able to show health insurance, to say, how could we get a better premium? How could we get a better rate on our health insurance? How can we, work with all of these different institutions? Yeah, this is super exciting.
There's also other Ashoka fellows who've done one piece or another of that story, including the health insurance, but I think it's not as connected. So there's bigger opportunity here. We only have 90 seconds left. So I'm going to be quiet. Hamse, Lily, Jake, you 30 seconds for some parting comments, and then I think we should probably do this again. Hamse? Can't hear you.
All right. So yeah, thank you so much. This has been very insightful conversation, and I would love to reconnect, especially Lily. I would love to blockchain for impact is some area that I'm deeply passionate about, and I think it cuts across all of our work, here as a team. So looking forward to a further conversation.
Lily, any final?
Yeah, I'm so inspired, Jake, by everything you're doing. I can't even, you just dropped in yet another job that you're doing. And I'm like, when do you get the time? And you have this wonderful energy that's so contagious. I hope we can work together. I hope in any way that we can co-create something, hack something, think of something. Hamza, sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. I can't wait to talk to you about your incredible work. David, lovely to meet you. Bill, great to reconnect. I'm around if you need me and want to carry on talking. Thank you.
Thank you. Jake, you said you shared so much.
Yeah.
Great.
Let's get to work. We got a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Jake.
I'm going to see you in about 2 weeks in Albuquerque. So this conversation provides great context. Thank you, everyone, for your time and your insights. And I'm really excited about the connections and the ideas here.
Thank you.
So until next time, take care. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.